Okay, play. And we're live. Okay, thanks everyone for coming in. This is about half an hour late. We were trying to figure out which wonderful video to get for you guys. And we finally decided upon the topic of the Mary Sue. And of course, with me is LiteratureDevil from last time. And I think it's good we actually address tropes and other such literary devices because they're either misconstrued, over the top, or labeled incorrectly. Now, with the Mary Sue, there really is no definable consensus on what exactly a Mary Sue is. We can go to TV tropes, we can go to popular YouTube channels, we can read up on these things. It's hard to say. I mean, there's all kinds of definitions, all kinds of examples. Um, it's part author insert, it's part wish fulfillment, it's part magical plot device. It's like it's like a walking Deus Ex. Part Superman. It's all these things. So specifically, we're going to be looking at a video by was it IDRlabs, and his understanding of whether Anakin is a Mary Sue, because people did not agree that Rey was a Mary Sue. Well, if Rey's a Mary Sue, then Luke's a Mary Sue. It's like, well, no, Luke's not a Mary Sue. Okay, what about Anakin? And that's how the argument usually goes. So if you believe in it, fine. If not, that's great. And again, it is a nebulous term, so because there's no written definition, you're free to believe whatever you like. But there are some problems with these kinds of characters and inserts into movies and books that every writer and every watcher, every reader should be aware of. And you're only going to see a lot more of these things as social justice issues pop up or political issues come in media, representation issues. I don't know if that's a real thing, but people think it is. So they're going to have character inserts that do amazing things that are unbelievable for all sorts of reasons. So I think we've defined the term as generically as we could without giving a clear understanding of exactly what it is. But the author will do that for us. So that should help. There we go.
Since many people have faulted Rey for being a Mary Sue, the people who like Rey have defended her by saying that Luke and Anakin are also Mary Sues. We've already covered whether Luke is a Mary Sue in another video. This time...
Okay, I'm going to stop it here real quick because I see this argument a lot. Anywhere you see these, where it comes to these, anything that's labeled SJW or whatever, so in this instance, they're saying Rey is a Mary Sue, and then the people who defend Rey come along and say, well, Luke and Anakin were also Mary Sues, and then you see this in other media forms of media where people are complaining that comic books have become too political these days, and then the people who defend these new comic books come back and say, well, comic books were always political, and that's also not entirely true. Since today's medium in these sections are more pushing politics rather than inspired by politics, which is different. But it's that argument, that one specific argument that keeps popping up everywhere, and you should watch out for that because it's kind of tricky sometimes.
Let's look into whether Anakin is a Mary Sue, with references to Luke and Rey thrown in for comparison. A Mary Sue is an overpowered and perfectly good character, with no explanation given for that power level. A Mary Sue is typically instantly liked by all of the established characters. Yet at the same time, a Mary Sue doesn't have much of an actual personality. Since the other characters have no apparent reason to like them so much, Mary Sues feel like a wish fulfillment fantasy, more than they feel like actual characters in the story.
So that's 4 definitions or 4 qualities for a Mary Sue. And they sound reasonable. I don't know if that's all they are, but that's the criteria this person's going for, and I think that's fine.
Right. And as far as in one of my videos, I do say that do side with the opinion that Anakin is a Mary Sue, and this video will eventually assert that he isn't one. Let's see here, and I do believe that Anakin is a Mary Sue for the most part, at least in his how his character is conceptualized, mainly because of how he was how the Anakin was inspired, not necessarily Darth Vader, but how Anakin in the prequel series was kind of inspired, and how the rules are kind of set in his favor, as from a writer's point of view.
I guess you could say that for the first movie, that
Yeah,
because he's the little kid, we know he's not going to die, and we know that Qui-Gon believes in him so highly, and he just can do everything amazingly. He's basically immaculate conception. He's just amazing with droids. He's amazing at flying. Um, I wouldn't say he's instantly liked, but by the powers that be that believe in him, everyone likes him, even Padme.
yeah,
So
and the criteria he gives for Mary Sue right here is they're pretty good indicators. They're not just because like in my opinion, just because someone is liked or really powerful or anything, even if their powers go unexplained for at least in the introduction, doesn't mean they're a Mary Sue, but they're pretty good indicators, like the rustling leaves.
yeah, and we're talking about a child in the first movie anyway, so it's
Yeah.
like that's pretty over the top for a kid to be
Oh
all
yeah.
these things.
Oh yeah.
So, but he doesn't make that distinction, I don't think, in this video about just the first movie. He looks at Anakin as a whole.
Yeah, as a whole character.
Finally, being perfectly good and overpowered, typical Mary Sues are also never embarrassed and never fail in important ways, which is one reason why Mary Sues are typically considered bad screenwriting. So, is Anakin a Mary Sue? Let's find out. First, we have the Phantom Menace. Here, young Anakin does seem to have some of the qualities of a Mary Sue. Qui-Gon treats him with extreme reverence in this film, similarly to how older and more reputable characters in a story typically treat a Mary Sue. Anakin is also extremely overpowered, with his skills in pod racing and piloting, flying a fighter craft, and destroying the Federation flagship. These points all count in favour of Anakin being a Mary Sue. But a Mary Sue's extreme powers are typically unexplained, and Anakin's power level is explained in The Phantom Menace.
Obi-Wan,
Yes, Master.
I need an analysis of this blood sample I'm sending you.
Wait a minute.
I need a midichlorian count.
The reading is off the chart. Over 20,000. Even Master Yoda doesn't have a midichlorian count that high.
Okay, while he's right that the usually Mary Sues get unexplained powers is because out of sheer awesomeness, and that an explanation does kind of diminish the argument that he's a Mary Sue. It doesn't. An explanation doesn't necessarily absolve them of that title, especially if the explanation is absurd like this one, because I make the argument that a Mary Sue ultimately is a character that has the universe kind of bend around them. Like the rules change to suit their whims as they move through it. So in this instance where they're checking like a Anakin's power level, quote unquote,
Yeah.
uh, they created this entire thing just so that the writers can tell the audience how awesome he is. And it doesn't even end there. It's not only is he, not only is he powerful, not only is he abnormally powerful, but they make a point to say that he's more powerful than Yoda, the most powerful Jedi that we know of at this moment from the original trilogy. So it's not an explanation that dismisses his Mary Sue title. It's more of an explanation that highlights it.
Not only that, but we're talking about you could see this explanation in two different ways. You could see it as a continuation of lore to say, okay, we're now going to invent some new technology or some magical beings in our blood that do all these things, or we're actively retconning the mysticism and understanding of what the Force is just for this character. So as you said, the universe is bending, the lore is changing, either being included or retconned to facilitate this plot line.
Exactly. So, and not only, and like I said, not only that, they use this retcon to show us that he, as a kid, is just naturally more powerful than even Yoda, the master of the Jedi Council. So that's a pretty big Mary Sue element right there.
I just got a super chat. So from Mohammed Ramadan. He grew up around mechanics, plus the Force is strong with him. We know the Force is strong with him, with further explanation, that's true. Yet he lost limbs in battles in general. That it could be an argument, but we also see Luke lose limbs as well. And he, can do stuff with his limb. That's Force ability, so does Vader, as we see. So there's a balance between his powers and his environment. So how is he a Mary Sue? Again, it's a nebulous term. And when we're talking about a magical force that allows you to do magical things that aren't explained very well, it's bordering on, this is complete wish fulfillment, because we need someone to be the chosen one, whatever that means. There's some prophecy. Okay, there's the prophecy of the chosen one. There's the midi-chlorian count. There's the Immaculate Conception. I don't know how well versed he was in paying attention as a child around mechanics, but that makes him a prodigy. If you're that little and you just are raised around mechanics, that doesn't mean you're going to be amazing at mechanics and dogfighting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's either a prodigy or a savant that we've never seen before. Or the writers are just trying to justify Darth Vader as being the most amazing dude ever, and we're giving him this equally amazing, or trying to equalize his childhood for what's to come.
Exactly. That's where a lot of the prequel influence comes from, is that Darth Vader was such a influential character and important character, even according to the lore, that they decided to make a whole movie trilogy around him, which fits because he is Luke's father. But they kind of like fell in love with how much popularity Darth Vader had, and you can see how much it influenced the prequel trilogy negatively, at least, especially in the first movie. I do know that Anakin, he does kind of pander out over the remaining movies, and he kind of gets fleshed out, and he kind of becomes more of his own character. But everything around the metaphysical reasoning around the character is that the universe kind of does revolve around him, and you can see how it does, especially when he has an immaculate conception. He has huge potentials for the Force, even more natural than Yoda. People kind of instantly take a liking to him, and if you notice, one of the things that I would point out here is that while it's true that typical Mary Sues just have everyone fall in love with them instantly, it's the other side of that coin is that when a person does not like a Mary Sue-ish character, they're treated as if they are in the wrong. So if you notice that when young Anakin is taken to the Jedi Council and they say, no, this is a bad idea, we shouldn't train him, I sense darkness in him, he's a little too old. The story treats the Jedi Council as being in the wrong, and Qui-Gon being in the right when he decides to train Anakin anyway. So that's another thing. That's another element of a Mary Sue that people kind of gloss over. That not everyone does like a Mary Sue character, but people who dislike them are considered wrong or evil. And they should move in the ways.
When I look at a protagonist, I don't necessarily want the universe to revolve around him, but
Exactly.
I want the writer to create the universe for the protagonist to navigate through. So there's a difference between how focused you put your character and what capacity. And in this way, I don't feel like the universe is revolving around him. I know he does some amazing things in that universe, which are ridiculous, like fly a ship into space and fight a war and blow up an entire space station. Like that's pretty ridiculous for a child of that experience and what have you. And it's like, I know what works. It's spinning or whatever. It's like, okay, sure. So there's some element. There has to be some element of wish fulfillment there, on behalf of George Lucas. He wants the childhood of Darth Vader to be amazing, and he also wants the children of the audience to feel like they're along the ride with this kid. So
Right, and in the end, there's nothing wrong with making him a prodigy. I mean, it's fine that he's like this wizard with mechanics. It's good that it's fine that he's a excellent pilot, just naturally good at piloting. Because you know, prodigies exist in the real world, so you do have people who are unnaturally talented. What makes you put Anakin Skywalker ultimately in the category of a Mary Sue is these particular metaphysical facts where the universe was created to revolve, seemed to be created to revolve around him and his story. Well, whereas compared to Luke, he seemed like a character who's dropped into a great story, and that he kind of manipulated the world around him with his actions and his sacrifices, and like a normal hero does.
all right, let's continue.
All right.
Now, in spite of a lot of people, myself included, not liking the explanation given here, Anakin's power level is explained, unlike Rey's for example. Then we move on to Attack of the Clones. Anakin is not liked by the other characters. In fact, he's chided by Obi-Wan, and Padme thinks he's a bit of a creeper.
Please don't look at me like that. It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Anakin also loses his lightsaber.
I want to point out there that that's what I was talking about, where the characters who dislike him, because characters can dislike a Mary Sue's character, but the characters who do dislike him are treated as in the wrong according to the story.
And they eventually do like him anyway.
Yeah, because here's a difference, a crucial difference, because it might be kind of difficult to discern on the surface. That I'm not saying that I'm not calling people wrong for disliking him. I'm saying that the story, the writer is, kind of focusing, kind of trying to manipulate the audience into thinking they're wrong for disliking him. So you have the Jedi Council who say we shouldn't train him. Now they were obviously right. You shouldn't train this guy because he's, their instincts were correct. But the story, according to the perspective, the Jedi Council are in the wrong because Anakin Skywalker is a good guy, quote unquote. It's wrong to dislike this kid. Even Obi-Wan, who is a hero, even in the first movie, dislikes him, and he's treated as in the wrong for doing so. And then Padme, as he pointed out in this, I think it's the second movie, she dislikes him. She finds him kind of creepy, probably because he is. And then she's treated as in the wrong for finding him creepy because she's wrong now. It's treated as if the audience is supposed to think that she is wrong now, but she'll get over her wrongness by falling in love with him later. So it's that's a kind of an indicator of Mary Sue, where you have to like this character to be in the right.
We're looking at the elements that the author of the video is looking at, and we're sort of dissecting them. So there are nuances to the criteria.
Oh yeah, I mean this whole thing, everything in writing and literature is more of an art than a science. But there are base elements where usually it's this case, and that's what I've come to see, because when it comes to a Mary Sue character in particular, it's very hard to discern between what makes a Mary Sue and what doesn't. So, and like he said in the beginning of the video, the main elements of Mary Sue typically are that they're overpowered, they have no explanation of those powers, everyone loves them, all that stuff. But that's not necessarily what makes a Mary Sue. It's the fact that the universe revolves around them, and that's what I run with, and that's kind of why I still believe Anakin Skywalker is a Mary Sue. Maybe not as big a Mary Sue as Rey. Rey is much bigger and much worse of a Mary Sue, but that's why I still think Anakin does fit in that category.
So even though if he's in that category, does that make him a bad character? Does that make his representation as his growth into Darth Vader bad?
Now, that's another good point that I have actually thought on in the past. Is it just because a character is a Mary Sue, or Mary Sue-ish character, does that mean they're bad? In my opinion, no. Being a Mary Sue doesn't mean it's a bad character as long as it fits. It still fits, you know. One instance. This isn't necessarily fit as a perfect parallel, but I have watched the anime series Death Note, and if you look at the main character, Light Yagami, I mean, if you look at all of his stats, he rolled max on like everything in life. Like, he's like the smartest guy in the world as a teenager. Everyone loves him. He's super athletic, like Olympian level athletics. He's won awards and everything. He's popular with everyone. You know, he has maximum guile. He can think on his feet. I mean, he's like the perfect guy. It's just that, but he's still presented really well because he needs to be that way. All right, he still needs to be that way so that the story can happen.
Even if he wasn't half of those things, if he just had his intelligence and the ego to back that up, that would still be sufficient.
Right. But he does have all those things, and he kind of fits the typical Mary Sue archetype, but it doesn't matter because it still fits. It's still fine. He doesn't destroy the story. In fact, those overblown qualities in him kind of help the story.
See, this is the kind of problem I see with Darth Vader, because Darth Vader, as we saw him, he was already at the peak of his power the first time we saw him in Episode 4.
Right.
So you have to explain how a character becomes that powerful, becomes that great. And we had to, or Lucas had to show some progression from losing his mom and all the pain and suffering he went to, and why he had to do what he did, which arguably was not done the best way. But we had to get that connection from A to Z. And the 3 first movies, or the prequels, sort of just rammed it down your throat. And you're like, okay, that's why? Not the best way to do it. And I'm sure there's other stories, when we saw with Rogue One, of him doing other things as he went through the years. But they never really encapsulated that detail of what made Darth Vader, aside from, well, he had a really messed up backstory.
Right. In the prequel series, the way Lucas has Anakin go through, if you just take the prequel series on their own, Anakin doesn't really go through a believable change, as you know, to meet the standards of Darth Vader. He kind of jumps here and there. For example, we don't even see his training, which was a big part of the original trilogy.
Well, that's kind of important, because compared to Rey, compared to other, we don't know what Yoda did, but we know that Jedis need training. They can't just do things. So
at least Anakin had training. I think I said that before.
Right. That's kind of the main point here. Is it doesn't matter if he was like Jesus. It doesn't matter if he had more potential than Yoda. What did he do with his time? He was trained, not all the way.
Right.
And he did some pretty bad things. So that would imply he's even stronger, because he gave into the dark side. He has more power that way. So, okay, I got some super chats here. Hero from Cellular was Mary Stu, but good character. I don't know what Cellular is. It could be an anime. And then I just got $10 from Tom the Cat. Thanks, Tom the Cat. I wish you had a question.
That's nice.
Yeah, I like money, but you're afforded a question there, my friend. But hey, if you don't want to, that's cool too. yeah, another person mentioned that Vader, or rather Anakin, didn't really progress. It's like, well, he did train, and we did see him go through some problems. Whether those were believable problems or realistic problems from an average viewer is another story. And we're not going to critique the story writing prowess of George Lucas and gang, because we all know the stories weren't that great. But we did see some stuff happen to him. We saw how he dealt with his mom's death. He decided to slaughter a bunch of people. He wanted to save Padme, and his solution to that was killing a bunch of more people. Like, he just keeps killing people, right? So that already eliminates one of the criteria for making him likable in this by the author's video here. So again, we're not necessarily going by that criteria, but we're still trying to figure out exactly what a Mary Sue is and what that means to the character of Vader. And it's not the clearest thing to define. With Rey, everything registers as far as it goes on any metric you're using. What you've heard, what you think a Mary Sue is, it's all there.
Mm-hmm.
So with Anakin, he's a bit more nuanced, and
I mean,
depending on your how much faith you put into one of those criteriums, you could go either way, really. But that's only in the second and third movies. In the first movie, I think it's pretty much he's a Mary Sue.
yeah,
That's
it's pretty standard. I mean, everything revolves around him in the first movie, and he does pan out a little bit, the second and third, but there's still those little Mary Sue-ish elements there, where things kind of happen just so we can get him to the Darth Vader section of his life.
right, and that's where my brain goes, okay, this was not done well. It was not handled well. And I think that could be the cause of why someone would consider him a Mary Sue, because, oh, he was built from birth to be the best. Bullshit things start happening, and he gets through them.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was like real conflict, that there's a possibility he could lose, or imagine he lost limbs along the way, as opposed to just losing one limb from Dooku, and then he loses all of his limbs with this ridiculous 20-minute fight scene in a lava volcano. It's like, okay. Like, just like, all right, yeah, okay, George, you're ramming this thing down our throats. It's like, okay, we got what you're trying to do here. And believe it or not, the third movie is probably the better.
I think the third movie is the best of the trilogy. He's just, Anakin Skywalker is the most fleshed out, and that's a kind of an element that does follow the entire prequel trilogy. Is that George Lucas started out with the first movie, it's kind of bad. But then he kind of learned his lesson as the films progressed, and things did get fleshed out. He kicked out Jar Jar for the most part. He started to make things better. So the third movie is the best. It's the most fleshed out, most nuanced. And by that time, Anakin, I don't believe, would be considered a Mary Sue. But mainly in the first movie, not so much in the second movie, but still a little bit in the second movie. But why I just keep attaching the title to him is because of the metaphysical reasons why he was created, the reasons and the things happen in the movie. It basically was all some of the elements and actions and events happen the way they happen, just so that we can maneuver him to the Darth Vader suit, and it doesn't seem organic a lot of times. And that's
that jump. Yeah, the jump from evil Anakin to Darth Vader is like, he loses limbs. Yeah. I hate you. Boom, I'm Darth Vader. And Padme died. It's like, why? Because you screamed and got angry and you had a dream. You're like, what? It was just rammed right. Just rammed, just because he wanted it that way. And you're like, oh, things are just happening now, George. It's not how you do it.
and is foolhardy and rash, and gets fried like a tempura when he defies Obi-Wan's advice.
Together. You're going slowly on the left.
Taking him now! No, Anakin, no! No!
Yeah, not very Mary Sue-like over there.
Not there, no. No, I'll do it anyway. Maybe he had the arrogance of one.
Yeah, I guess that's a way of putting it.
Speaking of which, Anakin gets completely wrecked when he faces off against Count Dooku. Would it be possible to imagine something like this happening to Rey? Anakin does beat Dooku in Revenge of the Sith, but that's after 3 years of constant fighting and training. He's shown to have the familiar arc of adversity, failure and growth, similar to what Luke had when he...
Now, in regards to his training, he did actually go through it, but if we look at the original story of the Mary Sue, the idea was that you have this prodigy in Starfleet that just is the best at training, and can top Spock and can top the engineer, just the best. So if the training that he took was amazing, like he just aced everything, then that would be more qualities of him being a Mary Sue. But they just show the time he is with Obi-Wan and his adventures with him for a short time.
Right. So
he lost to Vader.
So in that instance, it's kind of that's what I mean by it's more of an art than a science, because while you should show the training of the character like you did with Luke, it's more of it just revolves, returns back to that one main element of a Mary Sue where the universe revolves around them. So if they go to training, unlike Rey, if he goes to training and he just aces everything like it's no problem, there's no struggle there. So they don't struggle. There's no challenge. They just ace everything. While that doesn't necessarily make them Mary Sue, it's a pretty big indicator that he is one. If they're supposed to be, especially if they compare him to maybe there's another ace student there who works really hard and top of the class, and then the main character just comes in and beats him with no sweat. Yeah, that's the universe bending him around them.
The first time around, so it doesn't count in favour of him being a Mary Sue. Also, Anakin gets criticised by the other characters throughout the film, which again is anathema to one of the criteria for being a Mary Sue.
Well, that's not necessarily true. Like I mentioned before, people can freely criticize a Mary Sue character. It's how the story treats the people who criticize the Mary Sue that determines whether or not the character is a Mary Sue or not. So, just like I mentioned that people who dislike the Mary Sue are treated as in the wrong, people who criticize the Mary Sue are also treated like they're in the wrong. So you can criticize Mary Sue all you want. It depends on how well the story treats you afterward.
So if you're saying there's a lesson to be learned through the criticism that the Mary Sue is getting, and if that's part of the storyline, and they learn from that, then they're not a Mary Sue. They're actually learning,
right,
as a part of an arc or something.
So yeah, so if you get like for example, if you have a regular protagonist, and they're treated, they're the good guy, they're white knight or whatever, and somebody comes up and criticizes them, if the critique is in the right, if the main character had done something wrong or maybe made the wrong decision, acted out of anger or whatever, and someone comes up and critiques them, then it's the main character who's treated as in the wrong because they did something wrong. But if it's a Mary Sue character, they could have slaughtered an entire village of kids or whatever, and someone comes up and says, hey, you shouldn't slaughter that entire village of kids, that's bad. The story treats the person who just critiqued the Mary Sue for killing children as in the wrong, for whatever reason.
And in this case, the criticism in this scene is of Obi-Wan telling Anakin, stop losing your lightsaber, this thing is your life, which, as far as I know, is not really a teaching of the Jedi. This is the first time we hear this.
Yeah, this is the first time it comes up.
Yeah, so it's kind of like this is a bit of contention within how we understand what the Jedi Order is all about. They're not warlike; they're more like monks. So
right.
they wouldn't really put too much precedence in a tool or a weapon. It's just a thing to them. And Obi-Wan's like, no, this is your life. And you're like, wait, what? So again, we're the criticism of Anakin in this case. It is criticism, but it's not a good criticism. It's not something that he's going to grow and learn about, or if it is, it's not very helpful to
Right.
him being a better character. It's actually probably a worse thing because now he's thinking, oh, this is a weapon. It's part of
Yeah.
my life. So I have to think in terms of killing and defending and all this stuff. So that to me is a bit of a lore incontinuity because you don't want to have the Jedi being perceived as this militant rate or militant group. You want them to be perceived as peacekeepers and friendly people who are wise and patient and non-warlike.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think it's more to do with the bad writing. And even though you say that, well, he's being criticized, but it's not really relevant. It's like, well, the criticism is bad because the story is bad. So that's, again, if I think episode 2 and 3, the writing was actually passable. It actually made sense. Like, oh, okay, this was logical. Then you'd be like, all right, he's learning a lesson. This criticism makes sense. This is what the story is trying to tell us.
Yeah, Obi-Wan would be in the right here, would be treated as in the right, and Anakin would be treated as in the wrong.
Yeah, and because he's the protagonist, and we know he's not going to die, he's going to win anyway.
Yeah. This is a prequel series. You know who's going to live and who's going to die.
which is to be instantly liked by all or most of the supporting characters.
Yes, Master. This weapon is your life.
I've heard this lesson before. You haven't learned anything, Anakin.
So in short, it would seem that Anakin is not a Mary Sue. He succumbs to the dark side. He is obsessive, petulant, and overly emotional.
So succumbing to the dark side, I don't know if that's like you're giving into your emotions is a criteria.
Anakin in particular, he was supposed to turn to the dark side. That's the whole point was.
We know that's going to happen, right? So it's not like, oh, whoop-de-doo. But that's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just what's going to happen. It's the how he got there, which could be good or bad.
Exactly. And so if, for example, let me put this an example where if he was a regular protagonist, he would have gone to the journey like they described it in the original trilogy, where he was a good guy and who slowly, over the course of a war, kind of, he felt the loss, he felt, pain, he saw people die, he saw suffering everywhere, and the negative emotions that the dark side feeds off of kind of build up over years and years and years, and then he would slowly succumb to that dark side, his dark intentions, and became Darth Vader. But since he has a Mary Sue element to him, where the universe kind of bends around him, the writing kind of disjointedly flings him from one thing to another, just so they can force him into the suit. So he's like a good guy, then he does some bad things, and then all of a sudden he's bad. So there's no like clear arc there. He kind of flips a switch. And like if you've seen the Plinkett reviews, he wasn't seduced in the dark side. He was tricked into it.
Right. And I could compare this. Let's say we have another story of good writing of a Jedi going to the dark side, and the most famous one that I know of is Revan. So Revan made the choice to go to war because the Jedi didn't want to, and he was fed up with millions of people dying by the Mandalorians. So he goes on this quest, and as a result, because he gives in to his feelings, he becomes dark side, or it's a natural progression for him, and then everyone admires him, and he enjoys the admiration, and then his Padawan or his best friend or whatever, like any dark side user, tries to usurp that power. So we get to learn about that. We get to figure that out through the course of KOTOR. With Anakin, it's just like, oh, I can cheat death. You're like, what? Are you stupid? And it's just, that's it. He wasn't seduced so much as just tricked.
Right.
And
that's why it doesn't feel organic. That's the problem here, and that why he kind of seems like a Mary Sue's character, because it's not organic. The universe just bends to make him, and that's more bad writing on that particular issue, but it kind of just, the universe bends to force him into the Darth Vader suit, pretty much. Force him in the dark side. It doesn't seem like a natural progression.
Right.
He is hot-headed and rash in his relation to Obi-Wan, and his infatuation with Padme is creepy and possessive. His backstory is explained from the get-go, and he had training for years. In spite of his power, he also fails a lot of the time, is not instantly liked, and certainly not perfectly good. He has a personality, and that personality is conflicted and whiny from start to finish. It certainly doesn't feel like wish fulfillment. And finally, he didn't have the high ground and most certainly didn't like sand. And that is why Anakin is not a Mary Sue.
Sand, however, is definitely Mary Sue.
Oh yeah, there is a video on why sand is sand a Mary Sue, because so many people were replying to his videos and didn't understand what a Mary Sue was. We just got pissed off and made a video about sand. So I think where we're here is that the first movie, which was the worst, had the worst writing, showcased Anakin as a Mary Sue in the purest, simple way. He's a child. He's born with these natural talents. He has all his potential to be amazing. He is amazing. He's only going to get more amazing. And as the storytelling got slightly better, I'm not saying it was good, but it got better as the movies progressed.
Oh, yeah.
The qualities of him being Mary Sue-ness weren't as strong.
Right.
But the only thing we had to fall back on was he's amazingly good at the Force.
It's naturally amazingly good at the Force.
With the whole prophecy nonsense, which went nowhere. Because there was no prophecy, even though we were told there was. So when you have a prophecy saying he's the chosen one, he's going to do something big, and you have no idea what, then you have this setup. And of course, the audience knows he's never going to die. So you have this immortal character who can't die, who supposedly is the strongest Force user ever, in control of apparently death. He's going to control death somehow. That's never realized. Tricked into it. It's kind of like, it just the prototype is just sort of retarded into this pseudo Mary Sue creature that just sort of keeps going on as the story goes on. And
right.
it's not one of, I wouldn't even say drama. I guess you can care for the guy if you really do, because we never really see Darth Vader till right at the end. And that's the problem. We want to see how he becomes Darth Vader, and what we saw didn't explain it. It just showed bad things happening to him reacting like a moron or a little boy. And then as the character says, or as the author says, he just becomes Darth Vader.
Yeah, pretty much. You kind of like flip the switch.
So it's hard to really characterize the arc of Darth Vader from Anakin as a Mary Sue.
Mm-hmm.
Because George did not know how to make Vader Vader. He started with Vader and says, this is the badass, powerful Black Knight in space. You're like, cool, okay, that's awesome. How do you get from A to Z, George? We don't know. But we're going to have lots of pod racers. We're going to have lots of toys. We're going to have Jar Jar running around.
He kind of forgot to get there. And then he's like, oh, all right, he's here now.
and one big lightsaber battle at the end does not make someone Vader. Him slaughtering a whole bunch of younglings, that helps. But that's a big, big jump from him who wants to save his wife and kids to him slaughtering a bunch of children. It doesn't make too much sense there. Like, there's things in the story that just do not connect if you want to treat this guy on a dramatic level that you can respect. Like, that's the thing with enemies.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to like them. You have to respect them.
Right.
You have to really go, like, Darth Vader was a badass in the original movies. He was just so confident. He exuded power. Anakin does not. There's never one time you're like, wow, I really respect this guy. Everything is blah. He is a wimp. He fails. He's really good at things, but he fails. And he is like, oh my God, again, he lost his lightsaber. Again, he lost his limbs.
Oh, yeah. And in Lucas's defense, a little bit, it is a significantly different challenge to go from making a heroic story, as they did in the original trilogy, to making the exact opposite, like a tragedy that they were supposed to be doing in the prequel series. So Luke is supposed to be a young kid who grows into a great hero, while Anakin Skywalker is supposed to be a young kid who grows into a great villain. So it's the exact opposite of what Lucas had experienced doing before, and so it's not surprising that there would be problems, major problems.
I know that, but it sounds like this should be a slam dunk because
Right.
when you talk about a villain, you take your protagonist and you Mary Sue the crap out of them,
Hmm.
and then you have this like Vader was unstoppable. How could Luke, a nobody, stop this guy? And there's all these scenes where Luke keeps failing against him. So it's like, great. How do you get to that level? Just show the progression of him getting stronger and stronger and stronger, fighting battles and winning, losing battles and coming back, and being more brutal, being more lethal, giving into his emotions. Just the mechanical, literal progression. That's what you needed to show. And because there's the time skips between movies, it sort of takes away from that. And all we get to see is him slaughtering a bunch of sand people, I think, slavers. Then he kills a whole bunch of younglings. Whatever fights he had throughout that, it doesn't really show him struggling aside from losing against Dooku.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I remember there was a scene in the beginning of the second movie where Obi-Wan is supposed to be his master, but they talk in the elevator about their past adventures, and it's always Anakin coming into his rescue in their stories, like I saved you,
Yeah.
I saved you here, and all that stuff. So it would be show more progression in that sense, and more realistic characterization if it was Obi-Wan chastising him, like, and would chastising him over like his flaws, like him running into a nest of Gundarks. It's Anakin that run into a nest of Gundarks, on impulse. Then it would fit in better to later on, where they're chasing the assassin through the city, and where he says you got to be less impulsive.
Yeah, I mean, it's not impossible to see the arc. It's just a weak one. It's not
Right.
like it.
And
I don't know why George wrote this guy the way he did. There are dozens of ways to do a villain, and all you do is make a protagonist and make him where character growth has the option of choice, where you go make the choice to be better, or keep doing what you're doing and fortify your belief. You keep choosing the fortify your belief unless it's the choice to be an anti-hero.
right.
And make sure that choice has value. And it's sort of worked. It's sort of worked, but not really. Because when the option where Mace Windu is like, we got to kill him. It's like, no, we don't do that. It's like, well, this guy's pure evil. Like, what are you going to do? Try him for being pure evil? It's like you kill people, you manipulate people, you have lightning shooting out your fingers. What more do you need? And it's like, no, we don't do that. It's like, listen, kid.
I see an interesting proposition in the chat. How do you differ a Paragon character from Mary Sue? Well, from what I know, a Paragon character is like somebody who's good, like really, he's just moral, upstanding. Everyone loves him. He's pretty much Superman, the Boy Scout. And that character is different than Mary Sue because the Paragon they can still earn their affection. They can still make mistakes. They can still be wrong. They can still, the universe doesn't necessarily revolve around them. And Mary Sue, as far as I've seen in my definition of Mary Sue, is that if the character has a universe bend to their will and bend to their needs when they need it, etc., then that's more of a Mary Sue. That is a Mary Sue.
Well, we're talking about a person who's trying to be the most good, the most
Right.
ideal good, not necessarily the most powerful.
Exactly. And they're trying, the keyword they're trying to be. So Paragon isn't necessarily good all the time. They can make mistakes. They can do something wrong.
Yeah.
Mary Sue can do the same thing, except when they do something wrong, they're in the right.
Right. So it's mostly an issue about virtues when you're talking about a paragon always being wise or courageous. There's lots of characters like that in Mass Effect and all sorts of other games that you guys know. So with Anakin, he obviously chooses to save his family in an evil way. So he has the right intentions, but he's doing it in a negative way. So he's not really a paragon anymore, because as soon as the paragon crosses that line, they've lost themselves, or they're not even aware of it. So that could be a bonus to his character, being, I'm doing this because I believe, and that's really what a antagonist is.
Right.
They believe what they're doing is right, even though if they're slaughtering the innocents or whatever the case may be in military jargon. So that is seen as a good thing for a villain to come about. It's how it's done. And because we see him being tricked into it, and he just like gets angry, he doesn't try and kill the Emperor. It's like, okay, I'll just go along with this life now, I guess. Like, why? Aren't you angry? Isn't the whole point was to save Padme, and you tried killing her, and then she died? And then what? You just keep going along. You just keep going. Like, why?
Just keep on moving. That's
yeah, he doesn't have a backbone. He doesn't have an ego. It's just like, I'm bad now. Thanks, George. So it's still bad writing, guys. Whether you call him a Mary Sue or not, the outcome is the same. But I bet if it was good writing, if it was, episode 2 and 3 worked, then we wouldn't have to deal with all this talk about whether or not Mr. Anakin is a Mary Sue. He would just be a well-established character with an arc who made some choices that made him go from good to evil.
Yep. And honestly, a bad writing, badly written arc, badly written stories are kind of like a fertile, growing garden ground for a Mary Sue. Like, you can have decent characters in a badly written story, but the Mary Sue is kind of like the fruits of a badly written story.
Yeah, so whether you call him a Mary Sue or not, because again, this is a very nebulous term. There's no definition that we consider agree upon aside from the author having his own. It's still bad writing. And it's not just the character himself. It's the whole plot lines, the whole storyline, the trilogy is poorly composed. And you can say there are some great moments. Of course, there are some great set pieces. There's always some great sensational music scores and explosions. That's of course. But when you sit back and think about these characters and go, wait a second, how the hell did a 6-year-old kid pilot a ship into space and blow up a space station
by himself?
It's just like, ugh. Why did Anakin keep being Darth Vader? I don't know. We don't know.
Well, I'm loving the discourse in the chat. That's what I love to see. Discussion, discourse.
Yeah, no, this is great. I love talking about these things. It's just that we use these terms to identify things in a simple way, even though the definition of those characters are a lot more nuanced. Anakin is not the textbook Mary Sue.
Oh no, he's not the ideal image of the Mary Sue when you think of one, but I still consider him one for the most part. As far as his origins go, as far as his conception as a character goes, and as it's presented in the prequel movies, I still see him as a Mary Sue, as far as the presentation and the metaphysical reasons surrounding his creation.
Yes, I have to agree on that. Okay, guys, I think they want us to do another video, but we were debating on which one to do before, and we finally settled on one. We had 2 others, but they weren't very good.
The Emperor did nothing wrong. I love that.
The only other video that I think was the Thor Ragnarok one by Wisecrack, which was actually, I liked it.
I usually like Wisecrack, to be honest. They tend to be on point on a lot of things. It's why it's always tough to find things to fight them on, but I can do it. I mean, there are things that I disagree with them on, of course.
Well, we can do it. It's about 10 minutes. I think we have the time. It's not going to take too long.
All right.
All right,
I'm up
just
for it.
pop it in. If you guys want it, we can do it.
This video is sponsored by Movement Watches and Sunglasses. More on Movement at the end of this video. Hey Wisecrack, Jared here. We all just saw Thor Ragnarok, and surprise, we have some thoughts. Not only is it quite possibly the funniest Marvel movie, it's also very close to being the smartest. Like most Marvel flicks, there's a metric buttload of smashy fight punctuated by smug self-awareness.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
But underneath the ocean of jokes, fights, and uncredited Matt Damon cameos, there are a few scenes that speak to really interesting ideas. But before we dive in any further, here's your obligatory spoiler warning. One of the most enduring images of the movie is Thor missing an eye.
Yeah, and if you look at the that scene, that's a scene from the non-spoiler trailer where he has both his eyes. And if you see this shot from the actual movie, they obviously kept it in for the trailer, but his right eye is removed. So
Right. Yeah, I remember seeing this movie. I'd have a lot of problems with Ragnarok, especially since the whole arena section portion of it, where he's all of a sudden thrown into another world just so he can meet the Hulk. It to me, it doesn't seem like it just seems disjointed. Like they're going along with the story, and then we're over here now to the arena part, and then after that part is over, we can get back to the story. That's what it seems like to me.
a lot of people didn't like this movie. I talked to Weekend Warrior. He didn't like it. He did a video on it. I thought I loved it, not because it was a great story or anything like that, because it was entertaining, it was simple, it was clear, every character had a motivation, and it was campy as hell. You know, it had the 80s vibe, it had the 80s music or the 70s music on the trailer. The villain was just a joke. Both villains were a joke. It was lighthearted, and it was fun and a great popcorn. Like, that's the thing. There's just enough depth, but we're talking like twice the size of a puddle. You know, just enough. It doesn't have to be gigantic to enjoy depth. So yeah, guys, we will be doing other videos tomorrow, so don't worry about it. Okay, one at a time, please.
Missing an eye just like his father Odin, and we couldn't help but ponder, if in Norse mythology Odin loses his eye to see a greater knowledge, what truth does Thor see when he loses his eye?
Well, yeah, what was it? He loses his eye for wisdom, I believe. He gives away his eye.
I think in the original myth, it's a literal thing. Like that's the eye he actually saw the wisdom with, and then he lost it because of that reason.
And Hugin and Munin are memory and knowledge, I think.
I believe
two crows that fly around the battlefield and come back to him, something like that.
So let's see why Marvel took Thor's eye in this quick take on Thor Ragnarok. First, a quick recap. Thor returns to Asgard from a spirit quest, complete with the crown of a fire giant, only to find Loki in charge disguised as Odin. They go to find the real Odin, who promptly dies. Immediately after, big sister Hela, goddess of death, comes back from her banishment to Hot Topic to claim the Asgardian throne and expand the empire. So she destroys Thor's hammer and
yeah, that's pretty much a Mary Sue moment right there.
She destroys this ancient hammer that was crafted in the heart of a dwarf star and made from this ancient godlike metal.
It was like Udur metal, and the star was like a pulsar. What was it? No. It was like one of the most dense stars ever. So this thing is ridiculously powerful, dense, and it's magically enchanted so that it's liftable by who's worthy of Thor. She just grabs it and breaks it.
Like it's nothing.
Yeah.
There actually is a term for that. It's called, I think on TV tropes, it's called the villain Sue, where it's kind of like the opposite, where it's not the protagonist who's a Mary Sue, it's the villain. And my criteria still fits for it, where the kind of universe kind of revolves around that villain. And I actually have a really good example, but it falls into the anime realm. I don't know if anyone has seen the anime Rurouni Kenshin, but there is the main big bad of that series is a guy named Shishio, and he is the perfect archetype of the villain Sue because everything, every character has to throw against him fails. Like, and it fails easily. For example, uh, Kenshin like spends like this. He spends an entire arc trying to learn this super ultimate move. He uses it several times on other characters, uh, and it works. And it's like it's supposed to be unstoppable, like the ultimate move of the ultimate style of swordsmanship.
Well, just to be clear, there's more than one trope related to the Mary Sue. There's sub tropes or
Oh
sub
yeah,
characters. So
yeah. There's a whole slew of them. So, but the in this particular one, since it's mentioned here, and Hela seems to be at least borderline this version. But on in Shishio's case, when the main character uses this ultimate ability against him, he uh he survives it. He blocks it. It's supposed to be like unblockable, but he blocks it. Other heroes step in to fight him. He easily beats everyone, even though they were just a few episodes earlier. They were these super duper warriors. He defeats everyone. The only way they could defeat this villain was because he had a timer for how long he could actually fight. So if he goes over so long, he dies because he'll overheat because he has no sweat glands. That's how they defeat him, not because they overpowered him or outthought him or outmaneuvered him or anything like that. It's because they got him. They kept him fighting for too long, and they almost literally say this: the universe and destiny kill him off. That's a villain Sue. That's a villain Sue right there.
so his weakness, he needs to lose when he needs to lose, essentially.
Yes, that's basically what it was. They said, I think the line was, "Destiny has chosen the main character to win." They literally say something around that.
Oh.
So no one defeats the bad guy. He's defeated by destiny in a literal sense. But going to an earlier question, does a Mary Sue is because is a character a Mary Sue just because they're Mary Sue doesn't make it bad, a bad story? Not necessarily, because it's still a good story. It's still turned out to be an excellent story. So famous, in fact, in Japan that they made like 3 live action movies. I mean, Rurouni Kenshin is huge. It's a huge IP in Japan.
I remember watching it back in the 90s, so yeah, it's pretty big.
Sends Thor and Loki tumbling into space. Thor ends up being a gladiator on a planet called Sakaar. Loki weasels himself into Jeff Goldblum's aristocracy, and with the help of new friends like Valkyrie and his colleague the Incredible Hulk, Thor gets back to Asgard, fights Hela, and saves his people. What a ride. So sure, Thor fights the Hulk again, Jeff Goldblum plays a space DJ, and Loki gets rescued by a Kiwi rock monster. But what's more interesting is Ragnarok's preoccupation with the past, and how it forms the world we live in. This is most clearly seen during Hela's reign over Asgard. When Hela arrives, she sees a fresco depicting Asgard's history as all peace treaties and celebrations. But that's not how she remembers it. To her, Asgard's history is all blood and conquest and feeding enemies to her giant wolf. She wrecks the fresco, revealing one hidden beneath, one that depicts the history Odin tried to sweep under the rug. He and Hela conquering, killing, and generally wreaking havoc. She destroys what appears to be the entire Asgardian army on her own, then brings her old armies back to life, and suddenly, Asgard is just like when she left it, a military dictatorship run by a power-hungry deity.
Okay, so it's a dictatorship of a military of ghosts, of whatever the creatures that were instoned, and she brought them back to life because she's, again, Hela. She just commands life and death. So when you have this overpowered character doing all these things, and of course all the people just flee. So when you're talking about a military dictatorship, you're just talking about a military.
Yeah, that's all she has. She has nothing to rule over. Everyone just leaves or is killed.
Yeah, so it's not the best way to describe the politics of whatever this society is now that they've escaped Hela. It's
Which
just...
I think what would have made it a little bit quote unquote smarter is if she arrived and actually brought the past with her. Like she confronted the people of Asgard and this showed them her point of view, where the Asgard should return to this ways of war and conquest, and then they resist at first, then through some sort of display she manages to get people onto her side. Then it would be more of a what he would call like a battle between Asgard's past and Asgard's future. But as it's presented, she just comes in, kills everybody, makes everyone flee, and she's pretty much a kingdom of one.
Yeah, she kills the entire military single-handedly. She just stands there, everyone's ready to fight her, and she just, without effort, just wipes them out. Yeah, she does a dance here and there, but it's just a joke. Like, it just annihilates everyone.
Yeah, she kills everyone easily. Like, she doesn't even break a sweat.
Yeah, characters we knew from I think the first or second movie of Thor, they just get killed. I think the only one who doesn't die is Lady Sif, but I don't even think she was in the movie.
I don't remember her in there.
Yeah,
she also kills all the Valkyries too in that movie.
Right. It was just like, okay, this is a Marvel movie, a little over the top. Usually, when you have a comic book like this, the villain either wages war with war, or they come in directly to the throne room and annihilate everyone, and now they're in power. They don't go through everyone, and then get to the throne. They just like they're not stupid. They just they know what they want.
And they should probably read The Prince and see how that goes.
Yeah, I haven't. Thor is a very strange comic, but this was done obviously for cinematic effect and special effects.
Oh, yeah. But if he's asserting that this is, if he's a really smart movie, and he does make the assertion that it's smart because one of the main themes is Asgard's past is now fighting Asgard's future. It would be better if that were more literal sense than just Hela she herself representing the past, and everyone else representing Asgard's future.
Yeah, because Hela could have been representing anything.
Yeah, anything at all.
She's just really, really powerful. So it's like, I believe in chocolate cake sundaes. Bow to me or else. It's like, what the hell? Bow to me. Boom, you're dead. You will believe in chocolate cake sundaes. Like, what? Okay, sure. Now I'm in charge. Okay, why is this crazy lady making cake for everyone?
That's why I think it would be a lot better if her ideas started to take hold within some of the people of Asgard, and that way the theme could pan out a little bit better.
Yeah.
That this is okay. These people want to go back to conquering. Like the idea of returning to a warlike society is now taking hold in the root of the people, and Thor would come in and try to stop that, convincing his people that no, our way of living now is better, and it'll be a bigger clash, more of a clash of combat and a clash of ideas.
Yeah, like in Children of Dune, when Muad'Dib, he walks as a blind man, clouded, like he robed, so no one knows who he is, and he's walking around the people, and he's just bashing on the government when he used to be the guy in charge. So yeah, that would sow the seeds of discontent. It would get the people, as opposed to just being a bunch of people running away that you need to save, because you need people to save in a hero movie, to actually be involved, to have a voice. It would be a bit more sophisticated. It would be a bit more, you would have an argument. You wouldn't just be a person killing people. So,
right.
What's really clever here is that just as Hela wants to reach into the dark and bring the past back to life, so too do all our central characters need to reconcile with their pasts in order to make any progress. This is the substance buried under all the comedy in this movie. It's interested in how we deal with our past. For the Hulk, this is simple. Banner has been stuck in Hulk mode for 2 years. It's not until he witnesses his past by seeing a video of Black Widow that he's forced to confront what he left behind when he flew into outer space, allowing Banner to emerge and the escape to truly start. Valkyrie used to be a member of an elite all-female Asgardian strike force, but ages ago, when Hela killed everyone but her in a huge battle, she gave up that life and became a scavenger. It's only when she confronts those memories that she can return to the heroism she left behind. Loki's confrontation with the past comes through his connection to his brother. Loki has always wanted Thor to recognize him, either with love or fear, but toward the end of the movie, Thor indicates that he no longer cares about Loki. It takes until the last 20 minutes of the movie, but Loki finally realizes that to start his own future, he has to grow out of the person he was in the past. Despite his self-aggrandizing battle cry of "Your savior is here," we see real growth in his decision not to steal the Tesseract, and in the fact that after the fight, he sticks around instead of running away. But what about Thor? Well, that's the biggest issue with this idea of history, and what keeps the film from being decisively Marvel's smartest movie. We never get to see Thor dealing with his own history, nor with Asgard's. The closest we get to this is his battle with Hela, which could be considered as a metaphorical conflict between Asgard's future and its past.
Well, okay, most of that's pretty much true, I would have to agree. The whole arc with Thor has to do with his father and how he does not feel sufficient enough to be his dad or to take over his dad as a leader of Asgard.
Right.
And that's showcased in the loss of his hammer. So, as a typical hero's journey, you have this inciting incident, you're dropped from the place of power you're in, and then you're thrown into another world. In that case, it was Sakaar, and he has to struggle to get out of that, and all these stupid things happen, like he gets electrocuted 4 times, and how the god of thunder gets electrocuted and he gets hurt, I have no idea. But there is a scene where he's talking to his father, and he deals with that issue, and that's during the conflict with Hela. So I don't know why he's not addressing that. This is an arc for him. But whether it has to be about his past is whether it's his immediate past or whether it's what he came before. Because Thor is really different now as a character. He's gone through so many movies.
He's changed a lot.
Yeah,
since his first arrival in the movie scene, he's changed a lot, significantly. Like he's like 2 different characters now. So we do see some progression, and it does feel organic.
Right, and I would say it's even dramatic because there were times where, he doesn't go into it, but the scene where after he gets his eye cut out and he's, Hela says, "What were you the god of again?" And he's on the balcony, and he's having the vision of his father, and the father's and of course time stops, and his father starts talking to him. "What are you, the god of hammers?" All these funny little things, and that's when he realizes what he is, and then he gets back into fighting spirit. So that is his arc right there. That's the climax of the story. So let's see what he has to say about that. I'm kind of curious.
This is the concept at the heart of Thor Ragnarok. In order to move into the future, people and societies need to reckon with their past, an idea that is very present throughout human history. It starts with the way that societies tell stories to themselves about themselves. For a long time, Asgard presented itself as a warlike culture. When Odin wanted to shift toward a more peaceful arrangement, he rewrote the history of Asgard to exclude Hela and all the fighting, and position himself as a benevolent protector. You've probably heard the phrase that history is written by the winners, but according to scholars like Michel Foucault and Jenny Edkins, history is written for the winners. What that means is that history is written to justify past violence and set the stage for whatever needs to happen in the future. Edkins explains this process by describing the end of a war. Victory parades, remembrance ceremonies, and war museums tell of glory, courage, and sacrifice. The nation is renewed, the state strengthened. With the commemoration of the past, we justify the measures taken to reach the future. That means the story of the past dictates the future.
What is he talking about? Like, yeah, this is nice and all, but this is not really relevant to what's going on in Hela. Hela just wants power. She wants what she wants from the past because that's where she came from, not because, she wants to change. That's what she knows.
Yeah,
and Thor's
she came in championing we should return to violence. It's pretty much
and Thor's like, "No, I'm in charge because Daddy said so, and you're crazy." Like that's as deep as it gets. Yes, the past is the mural on the wall, and we learn about it, but it's like, oh, that's bad. There really is no philosophical argument here. Thor could just say, "Oh, okay, I'll let you be in charge, but you better treat everyone right." But she's not going to do that. She's not going to just say, "Okay, yeah, I'll be benevolent and nice." No one wants that. There's no philosophical argument going on here, to my knowledge. And Thor is just feeling like a weakling because he's up against this ridiculously powerful character, and he doesn't know what to do because he lost his hammer.
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of like I think that was a good aesthetic to put in there. That when his hammer does get destroyed, because in the movie Ragnarok in particular, he does have a very he does show a very strong attachment to that hammer, and it's kind of like part of his being. And then to have it taken away from him, it kind of represents a huge loss. Like he's gone through a lot of loss in these movies, and up to that point, but loss of his hammer, that was kind of like the last thing. It's kind of like taking away. It's kind of like taking away all of Batman's fondness of his parents. Kind of like that one thing that was closest to him is now gone. It's so that's a good part of his arc. I would give the movie that.
We see this idea played with at the beginning when Loki is disguised as Odin. He's putting on a play recontextualizing his deception as sacrifice and rewriting the history of Asgard with himself as a hero, all while munching on fresh grapes.
Or it's just Loki being Loki. You know, he's just
that's all he's doing.
He's just being a goofball, tricking people.
He's basically just a troll. That's his whole character. No matter where you look, that Loki's entire character is just that of a troll.
He wants to be the best. He wants to be loved. You know, it's what he does.
Like he'll get involved in the things that have nothing to do with him or don't concern him at all.
Yeah,
just to mess with people.
Like at the end where he says, "Well, even Loki finds himself." It's like, well, you know, he gets to be seen as a war hero because he's actually fighting a war. It's like, why wouldn't he take advantage of that?
Exactly. I mean, that's his whole character. Opportunistic, just hedonistic. That's his whole being, pretty much. His whole characterization.
The Asgard around him is centered on indulgence and celebration, and Loki crafts its history to justify that behavior. He's not the only one to pull this trick, and he's certainly not the most dangerous. For Hela, Asgard's history is inextricably tied to this idea of place. She believes that expanding the territory of Asgard is the same as making Asgard more powerful. This
really? Is she how is she expanding it? Or if she were to expand it? Like, because no one's going to want to live in any of those places she expands or takes over. They're all gone.
Everyone ran away.
Yeah.
They're either dead or they're running away. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, she's not ruling over anyone. She's just has a bunch of stone warriors, and she throws spears at people.
She came from hell. She came from like the underworld, and she brought the underworld with her. She didn't make anything better.
This equation of a people to a place has a long role in human history. Theorist David Campbell explains the dangers of tying political identity and security to a single place. One of his ideas is essentially that when a population and its power is tied to a place, that makes everyone outside of that place an enemy and a potential threat. And in a world full of potential threats, safety is an illusion, and that means Hela's wars would wage forever.
Okay. We're talking about it's a space colony.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this platform, like, you know, when I read weird stories about creation myths, like there's a turtle holding up the world.
Oh yeah.
It's like it's literally a big platform that's enclosed in a bubble.
Yeah, the creation myths, they're crazy. Everyone should read as many creation myths as possible because they are insane.
Yeah, that's all this is. So when they talk about expanding territory, like, where is she going? How do you? Yeah, she wants to use the was it the Bifrost Bridge or whatever they call that thing to go to other places, and I guess technically you can go to those places and conquer them, but is that her goal? Just to conquer stuff? Why didn't she conquer and keep the people of Asgard?
She's not really conquering. Like, the way she's portrayed in the movie, she doesn't really conquer things. More as she just goes around and eliminates everything.
Yeah, she's just killing or destroying things. She's not conquering them.
That's not conquering. Conquering is you dominate a place or something, and then you rule over it. This is extermination. There's a big difference.
Like, maybe she's talking like a conqueror, but she's not doing the actual conquering. She just wants to blow stuff up.
She's more like a natural disaster than a conqueror. She just goes along destroying everything without having any idea of how to rule or anything like that. Because if she were a good ruler, Because in order to conquer, you also had to rule in some capacity. She doesn't rule; she just kills everyone and sits in the big chair.
Like there has to be some. Eventually, she'd have to subjugate someone or something, some race, and they would be like, "Oh, you're the strongest. We are going to follow you now." And then that would be the people she rules over, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's never implied. It's never shown, and this guy's just talking about a political theory tied to location but we're in space. I don't know.
I kind of get the sense that they needed to put a video out, and they put this one together. That's what I'm getting from this. A little bit.
Yeah, a little. Yeah.
I mean, it does have some good points. Like I said, Wisecrack I find is a lot of time they are on points on a lot of things. But like I also said, I do disagree with them on occasion.
Takes a visit from Ghost Dad for Thor to understand that the people of Asgard matter more than the place or even the name. This is the epiphany that led Odin to casting Hela out. Her militarism based on defending the land of Asgard from threat or expanding its power would be the ruin of the people of Asgard.
See, he says that, but there's really no connection from that to the movie. Like, yeah, it makes sense. Yes, the people are the civilization, but did Odin really do that? Did Odin never represent that throughout the other movies? I don't remember the other movies very well. I don't think I saw the second one. But
I don't remember what I think Odin was always portrayed pretty much the same, and then the revelation that he was this great conqueror alongside Hela was supposed to be this huge revelation, a shock to the audience. So it would make sense that he was never portrayed as a conqueror, at least not until now.
Yeah, I mean, it's logically fine. You're saying this group of people is what civilization is. It's not the physical location.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. Again, we're talking about a space colony in space that has no planets. It has no other geolocation. It's literally just a space colony or a space station or whatever you want to call it that has a magical doorway to other places. Who knows where else? So, yeah, that's fine, and it's convenient for the story because we end up becoming a whole bunch of migrants, or all of Asgard becomes a whole bunch of migrants. So, yeah.
There's your politics.
This is why Thor loses his eye. In Norse mythology,
what?
That's why Thor loses his eye? That's what they came up with?
Her militarism based on defending the land of Asgard from threat or expanding its power would be the ruin of the people of Asgard. This is why Thor loses his eye. In Norse mythology, Odin trades his eye for knowledge. Similarly, Thor loses his eye in the moment when he finally sees the truth, that what really matters isn't territory.
No, he loses his eye because what's her name slices him.
Yeah, he didn't see any great wisdom. Because when he loses his eye, it was like, wasn't it like in the beginning? Or
it's in the throne room. They're fighting, and then they eventually fight further, and they get to the balcony, and that's when he has the vision with his dad. So it's not if it was at the same moment, then that would definitely help his argument. But
it had to be at the moment he gained the wisdom would be the moment he would lose his eye. That would make the perfect parallel to his father. That's how Odin did it.
Yes, but even then, his dad had to say, well, Asgard is an idea, and it's an idea based off the people. It's not based off the land you're standing on.
Right.
So
the heart is with the people. Not
his dad gave him the psychic idea to get the hell out of there. It's like, thanks, Ghost Dad. Visionary Ghost Dad. I'm tripping out. My eye got cut out. Oh, yeah. Wait, that happened like 5 minutes ago.
He has that in common with Superman. Both have ghost dads.
Yeah. What do I do, Dad? Just get out of there. Okay, that's good.
It's the people who create the culture. In the end, Loki unleashes the fire giant who destroys Asgard and Hela with it. By destroying the territory and making the Asgardians nomadic space travelers, they now...
See, that's another instance, like I mentioned before about the villains too. Thor wasn't the one who defeated Hela. Destiny defeated Hela. Remember that the whole thing with that big fire monster came out of a prophecy.
Well, that's the idea of Ragnarok, but no one knows exactly what the prophecy of Ragnarok's going to be, and it's not even talked about. Like it's just the title of the movie. I think it's mentioned once in the whole thing, but it's barely like this big deal.
Yeah, you think a movie called Thor Ragnarok would be more about a giant war and more, where everything comes together rather than what happens is it's just Hela on one side and everyone else on the other.
Yeah, and the only reason it came about is because Loki decided to bring that suture, whatever the fire god dude is, and he had
Yeah.
like this eternal flame thing. So they just combined the two, and he just blows up this giant giant fire creature. You're like, oh, it's the Balrog, only 50,000 times bigger. Okay.
Have a chance to create their own history unbound from the past, despite the pain it brings. Underneath a Sakar-sized pile of space junk, special effects, and fantastic jokes, Ragnarok is a movie about how we understand national, social, and personal identity in the context of our pasts.
Okay, then. I'm sure it is for some people.
Yeah, I didn't really get that sense from the movie.
The national, social, and political. Dude.
Now the past versus future of Asgard, I kind of get there was kind of hints there, but national and social, where was the social part? Just because some people are poor and people had to fight in the gladiatorial arena, is that the social part?
You could say that about any rags to riches. You could say that about any down the lowest point in a story where a hero is downtrodden. You could say that about almost any story.
Yeah, it's kind of generic. Like even the dealing with your past part that he kind of asserts during this whole video, it's also pretty generic. I mean, every hero deals with their past in some form or some manner. I mean, you have Luke, who was, for example, who was a farm boy who wanted to become a great hero. So he was kind of stuck where he was. So he had kind of had to destroy that sense, that part of himself, and then get launched into an adventure. Your typical like thriller action hero, they're always brooding and they're always down on their luck, and then they have to deal with their own, the troubles of their past usually, to win in the end.
Yeah, it's interesting. Usually, when you do have these prophetic stories or foreshadowing, it's very strong. It's like okay, and when you say a word like Ragnarok, that's like the end of everything.
Yeah, that's a final fight.
Yeah, and I guess within the context of Asgard, that's true, but within the term Ragnarok, it means all the Valkyrie and all their heroes that they bring back from the dead fight this eternal war forever. So that's not what this is.
Right.
Which is fine. It's just there's no mention, or there's very little mention of the term Ragnarok in the movie. So or a prophecy that's going to do something.
I really like how Ragnarok was portrayed in the Sandman, where Odin has like a little like a globe of it.
Right.
So he just looks at Ragnarok and he's like, "Oh, there's new people in there." So that was kind of cool, and that was part of the wisdom he got. So which fits into him. What kind of price did the price of losing an eye fit the gain? And that's one of the main points this video is bringing up. Did Thor's loss of his eye fit the lesson he learned? 'Cause he's not getting that back. Well, he might. It's a superhero universe, but presumably he's not getting that eye back. Was the price worth it?
I think it was more symbolic than it was, because we're talking about Asgardians who have all this crazy technology.
So, oh yeah, I mean it's symbolic, but was in the sense of the symbolism, was the price he paid because he's asserting that Thor losing his eye was him gaining some wisdom. So in this context, was his losing of the eye worth the wisdom he gained? That the heart of Asgard existed with the people and not with the land, the buildings, or his hammer. I think the answer to that question kind of either helps his point or destroys his point, because that would make it really smart if it worked out like that. That if that was a question that they were asking in the movie, was it worth it?
I think he's delving a bit too deep into this. I don't think.
Yeah, me too.
Obviously, you can take the politics of makes sense when you think about it from a cultural historical view. It's like, sure, where was that in the movie?
I must have missed it. It's going by what he's saying, like what he's trying to assert, and trying to tie it in with the movie.
Yeah, it's like if an art historian were to talk about the mural and where it came from. Oh, this is going to foreshadow this sort of event. It's like, okay, sure. I'm sure they have a really good art guy who made the mural, and he was thinking the same thing, I guess. But to the average viewer, no.
Whether for better or worse, those pasts inform our futures, and only by confronting them directly can we ever really move on. Hope you guys enjoyed the movie. Thanks for watching. Peace.
All right, no more Skillshare. That's good. So yeah, that was one of the weaker videos, I think. There were some good things they mentioned. Showing parallels to philosophers, historians, political science. That's all cool. I'm not saying that's bad. It's just not as deep as you'd think. And the good part of the movie are the characters. They have their motivations set up. Some characters are over the top, with especially Hela, but it's supposed to be a fun, entertaining, silly, action-packed, a little bit of drama-ish.
Yeah, they really ramped up the comedy and lightheartedness kind of in that movie.
That's why a lot of people didn't like it as much.
Yeah, that's why I didn't like it as much. I saw was it Thor: Dark World, the one that came before, and I thought that one was amazing. That was an awesome, epic, over the top movie. Like that's how you do the over the top movie. Like a part where Idris Elba's character, he just jumps off the platform with a sword and destroys an invading alien spaceship. So he basically had a Norse god jump and destroy a spaceship with his sword, and this is a good movie.
There's a guy with a sword. He blows stuff up. It's awesome.
That's what we're talking about when I say over the top. Norse god blows up a ship with a sword, and a dark elf spaceship with a sword. That's what I'm talking about over the top. It didn't need all this weird comedy and weird other world or whatever.
Well, one thing I remember in the film, to me, that stood out was there was not a sub boss, but a military character who didn't die, and he ended up being subjugated, and because he's a weakling or whatever. He was the guy who stood in for Heimdall, and he had all this stuff that he collected.
Yeah,
and he was supposed to be Hela's second-hand man or whatever. And I thought, what? That's a clever thing to show, because to personify a character as an idea, like let's say he was the military or the people of Asgard or fear or whatever, and he says, okay, you're in charge, I'm going to follow you because I don't want to die. Makes sense. And he never actually does anything bad. He never crosses that line. And there's a point in the movie where he says, okay, I'm going to stop following Hela, I'm going to protect the people, and he does so. And that's where we see a hero make a choice and be heroic. And I can't remember if he lives or dies, but he actually, he stops being a coward and helps the people of Asgard. I thought, okay, that's exactly what this movie needed. It needs something normal or simple instead of all these things blowing up and people doing things, because that we can relate to. It's like, oh, it's a guy who didn't do anything.
And those kind of moments are the difference. I have two categories of movies. I say a movie is good or great if it's like really good or great, like The Godfather or something, has a lot of substance to it. But movies I call awesome are the movies that are like bland, like straightforward, action packed, no brainer popcorn movies. And that's why I like Thor. I like the I put the over the top, shameless over the top, this popcorn munching movies in the category of awesome, and then really legitimately good movies in the category of good or great. So, and that's the difference between what I would call an awesome character and a great character is with the kind of choices they make. That can they make the hard choice? Is character develop, the character development, the character change that belongs in the good or great category. And if I just want to see a guy running gun like in a thriller, like one of those action thrillers, then it's an awesome character.
Well, that character, that guy got an arc and Hela didn't. So it's like
yeah,
this no-name dude. I can't remember his name. It's like, yep, he's a hero. Hela, she gets stepped on by a Balrog. It's like, okay.
Killed by destiny.
Yeah. Well, guys, I think that's as long as we should go today. If you have any other suggestions for videos, wait for this stream to be done and baked on the channel. Leave a comment. I'll be happy to take your suggestions because there's all kinds of videos out there. We're not sure what to cover. I am doing another stream tomorrow at the same time, 2 p.m. EST with Exlatalis. We'll be going over Anthem because the Anthem demo was released to a few people, and he captured a whole bunch of video footage of his time playing and not playing because there's all these delays and sitting in the lobby. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow. If there's any other videos, please wait for this movie to bake and leave them in the comments, and we will get set up for tomorrow as well as next week. So if there's any other questions, go right ahead. If not, I'm going to just scroll up and make sure I haven't missed anyone. Smudboy, the real message of Thor Ragnarok was sometimes you have to destroy the village to save it. Okay, I'll take that. That's a message. Smudboy, Mary Sue is an idea. It was more of an ideal. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. Trying to read these in order. Stop listening to this moron. He's spouting postmodern propaganda.
Postmodern propaganda.
He did mention Foucault, so he's not too far off. Yeah. Whether he talked about postmodernism.
Like I won't disagree with you there.
Yeah. Well, they do get a little bit too wordy for my taste, but usually they're right on the money. This eye shining. I liked how they retconned it too, because it was a spoiler in the trailer, and wish I. Well, I don't like lying in a trailer, but for cinematic reasons, I understand.
And I really like the discourse in the chat. And this
they're still talking about freaking Star Wars.
I know they are. This is amazing. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So anytime we get any person on the channel really, we'll be talking about tropes and other fun things in movies and storytelling, anything that we can poke at or know about. I think LiteratureDevil, that's your thing. You're really into those sort of stories and media and politics. So we're always going to call you in. But any video, guys, just be sure to leave it in the comments and we'll take a look at it. So I think that's everything. Thanks for your time, guys. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow.